this is basically what I'll be doing. Why give me your attention? How to build a bad CV, your CV in sections, finding what to sell, and then we'll go a bit practical, and then I'll take your questions and I'll try as much as possible to answer them. Yeah, so why give me your attention? Because this is me. Well, that's not the reason. Uh, it's mainly because of what I've been involved in over the past, should I say, 7 or 8 years. I finished pharmacy in Legon, right? That was in 2015. But I encountered something when I was in uni, and it was more like an incidence of a poor CV. So the first time I had to write a CV, I actually dabbed. The term dab, I don't know if it's very common, but like I copied and pasted someone's CV and just edited some things on there. I got the job anyway, but it was mainly because of a networking effect and less of the effect of the CV, right? And so I asked myself whether this was what I wanted to, use. My CV was a document I wanted to use to represent my capabilities. So I went on an exploration journey. It was not just myself, but more like trying to test everything that I'm learning. So I would ask my friends to present their resumes or their CVs, and then I'll tweak them. They'll apply for jobs. They get in. There were cases where I took people's CVs. We apply for the same opportunity, and then they get in, right? And then I don't get in. And it tells you about the beauty of individuality when it comes to personalities and the kind of experiences that you've gathered. So picking up from then, I decided to establish Career Wheel. It started as Productivity Optimizer, but eventually morphed into Career Wheel. And at Career Wheel, we are basically helping people tell better stories about their careers, whether it's through your CV, your LinkedIn, interview preparation, etc. Our core focus is to boost awareness, self-awareness about your capabilities. And it's because mostly we get caught up in a lot of things that we undermine the kind of things that we do on a daily basis, right? So Career Wheel is built to solve that particular problem. We've helped over 400 plus professionals, and this like direct support, like one-on-one. When it comes to like seminars or workshops like this, we've had a lot. I'm very confident that we've reached thousands of people through those kind of outreaches. But when it comes to direct one-on-one engagements, we've helped over 400 people across the globe, and it's for different functions: building CVs, cover letters, putting together like academic CVs for scholarships, etc. Now we are trying to scale this impact to millions of people with a platform that we are building. The platform is Mandy. Later, I'll share the link with you, but think about it that you don't ever have to think about having to maybe go through the torture of building your CV, but rather when you go through your day, right, your day-to-day activities, you sort of log them. And then later you're able to generate all the documents that you need, whether it's a CV, an SOP, whatever, you're able to just generate it with just a click. That's where we are thinking about, and that's how we'll be able to scale this impact to millions. So as Lloyd said, I started my career as a pharmacist. I spent most of my life as a pharmacist selling. So it's the same sales approach that I'm going to incorporate in this session for us. And not just that, so I've been a recruiter too as well. So I've been on both sides of the table. I understand what hiring managers, even academic committees need. It's basically frameworks, and I'm glad that I'll be sharing these frameworks with you today. 2020, I became a Shielding Scholar, and I've also been involved in the Amazon Career Choice program as well, coaching people who have very, very, should I say, low confidence in themselves to be able to transition into amazing jobs. So this is why you should give me attention, because there's something that I've done and dusted, and I hope you enjoyed this session. So how do you build a bad academic CV? I'm sure probably you're not expecting to have such a title, but yeah, there's a way to build a bad academic CV, right? And you build a bad academic CV when you don't develop a sales mindset. Building a CV in itself is like sales, right? So if you're thinking about building a bad academic CV, then you don't need to develop a sales mindset. You don't need to think about it as, oh, this is a sale thing that I'm going into. Additionally, you don't even have to bother about identifying who to sell to, right? Because if it's a sales process, then there's someone that you're selling to. You don't need to identify who to sell to if you're thinking about building a bad academic CV. You don't need to get an understanding of what these people that you're trying to sell to, what they want to buy. I mean, it's not important, right? After all, you're not even considering this whole process as a sale. You also don't need to even think about selling to the people that you've identified in the long run, right? But if you invert this and you are thinking about building a stellar CV, a CV that really counts, a CV that would put your foot in the door for opportunities. We are not saying that the CV will solve every problem, but it's very fundamental to a lot of the applications that you'll be putting together. Then it's quite important to develop a sales mindset. Think about it as you're selling your competencies, you're selling your skills, you're positioning yourself as the best candidate for a particular opportunity. So whether you like it or not, it's a sales process and you have to embody that particular mindset early on. Also, in the context of academic CVs, you need to identify who you're selling to, right? If you're selling to a professor or you're selling to a supervisor in academia or you're selling to academic committees, it's completely different from selling to, let's say, a hiring manager at work. But the principles are kind of the same, right? So it's important for you to understand who you're selling to because that leads you to the next step of getting an understanding of what they want to buy. Okay, so your professors, supervisors, academic committees, etc., they always put stuff into a requirements document. So you see something around if you're applying for a scholarship, the scholarship would have its own requirements. You should have this degree level. You should be able to demonstrate a particular skill, a particular trait. All of those things exist, particularly case in point for Shivnen. They are going to be asking you, you should have demonstrated leadership, you should have demonstrated networking skills, right? All those kind of things. So it boils down to understanding these requirements and then positioning yourself to reveal these properties about you, right? That has to be in line with these requirements. So that is one bit. The second bit is also to take a look at the course outline. Basically, what are you going to study? A professor or a supervisor would like to bank their investment on you. They would like to sponsor your education if they believe that if you get into the program, you are not going to struggle. You'll be able to put in your best and you'll be able to ace the course. So it's more like putting their money on the biggest bet. So you have to position yourself as the biggest bet. Now, when you're able to do all these background things, developing a sales mindset, knowing that it's all about selling, you're able to identify who you're selling to, you're able to get an understanding of what they want to buy. Then you now think about selling. So you don't go straight away to skip these 3 points and then jump straight to like the final part, which is more like selling to the people that you've identified, right? So you need to go through this stepwise process. And then when you get to the point where you're selling, you are now going to piece your academic or academia related experiences, talk about teaching, research, publications, articles. You're going to match up those experiences to the requirements that are needed, right? Whether in the course outline, in the course requirements, the funding requirements, the scholarship requirements, all of those things. You also have to consider your professional experiences because it helps to showcase, especially if whatever you're pursuing is in line with your domain area. Even if it's not in line with your domain area, you can consider some transferable knowledge that you can adopt, right? Which will position you as someone that they should place their bet on. Then you also have to consider your knowledge and skills. So all the education that you've undergone, the certificates, the conferences, all those kind of things, you will need to demonstrate all of that. Additionally, you need to demonstrate your voluntary and leadership exploits. Why is that important? It's important because most of these schools that are trying to get you to, come in school with them, in as much as you're going to study, you're going to get sponsored. They also have a long-term ambition for you, which is that you become an alumni, right? and you become an alumni that is able to command impact, that's able to command influence, they would want to associate themselves with you and say, hey, that's our alumni. And I mean, most unis do that, right? Most unis do that. They won't hesitate to actually affiliate themselves with you if you become very successful. So one of the ways that they evaluate these things is to think about the voluntary and leadership exploits that you've been engaged in, right? It gives them an idea that, okay, this is someone who is able to even dwell outside the academic space, outside the research lab, like Lois is doing. Lois is running Dear Young Graduates. And if should she apply for any opportunity, she can definitely have Dear Young Graduates on her CV, mainly because think about the influence, right, that she's having on about 89 participants on this call and many others who are tuning in on Facebook Live, as well as several other channels. It gives the university a platform to showcase themselves that this is someone that we groomed. So don't downplay your voluntary and leadership exploits. Never downplay them. And it's quite important to note that even when I was writing my statement of purpose for Shivnin, I can recall that not the CV, but then when it came to the actual essays, the stories that I presented, they were about 90% my voluntary work, things that were outside my paid work, and 10% things that I was being paid for. So that tells you about the impact of voluntary work and how that can feed into your success. And lastly, your credibility. And you get this credibility transferred to you through your references, right? So the kind of references that you're going to use for your application, the references that you're going to list in your CV, they shouldn't be people that you are not in contact with, right? They should be people who are able to vouch for you. And by virtue of they vouching for you, they transfer their credibility to you. And that adds some weight to your application. So if you want to build a bad academic CV, don't do any of this. But if you want to build a stellar academic CV that will get you places, then you need to consider all these points that I've listed. So if you want to build a good or a stellar academic CV, this is what you have to do. Now, let's take it to the next level. Your CV in sections. So typically, you would realize that most scholarships or most applications, academic applications or courses, let me put it that way, are roughly split into taught masters or taught programs and then research-based programs, right? You can have research masters, you can have like a PhD, etc. So knowing where you're playing in is also very important, because if you're talking about a research-based CV, then you are literally focusing on throwing more light on research things related to research, right? If you're looking at a top master's program, then you may want to, not that research is not important, but you may want to show your professional side more. And why is this important? It's important because top masters are supposed to help you build the capacity and then go and apply it in a field with or without research, although there's a research component. Research-based programs are very, very focused on, finding new knowledge, going down deep into the depth of all the trenches and getting that new information that people in practice would be able to use, right? So understanding these two things and understanding where your course falls is also part of the selling process, because it helps you to align whatever you're selling to the requirements of the program. So there's a non-exhaustive list. And one thing that I've found about a lot of people is that they are often confused about how do I group my CV into sections? How do I, understand that this goes into this section, that goes into that section? Trust me, the bottom line is that you can organize your CV in any logical manner, right? So all these things that you're seeing, I would say they are best practices. Someone can decide to put, obviously you wouldn't have someone putting their skills first. There's going to be some form of professional summary, but someone can decide to take out their professional summary and then start with the skills, right? Someone can decide to de-escalate the skill section, put it at the bottom. And a lot of people build CVs in a certain way, but for us a career view, this is something that we've seen that has helped, it sort of helped people achieve success. But in professional summary, it's like the abstract to your research paper. First thing that comes in the resume, but it's the last thing that you have to draft. I'll take that again. Your professional summary is like an abstract to a research paper. It is the first thing that you encounter when you're reading a CV. When you're research paper, an abstract is the first thing that is the last thing that you draft. Your abstract, you don't start a research paper writing the abstract. No, you write everything and then now you summarize it into an abstract. You see on the CV, it's the last thing that you touch on. It's supposed to be a summary of everything that you've written in a very high level manner so that whoever reads the professional summary goes like, wow, this is someone that I want to engage with. And they are sort of wood to go further on your CV. Okay, so you can have a professional summary, you can have an award section, you can have a skill section, research. You can split the experiences into research, teaching, professional experience. You can have them as fused. You can have a publications and article section. And also, let me touch on that as well. A lot of people would think that publication should be stuff that you've only published, right, in an academic journal. But that is a wrong approach to take, mainly because when you are demonstrating your written communication skills, you can demonstrate that through articles. Additionally, you can demonstrate your analytical skills, how you're able to analyze things and put things together, right? You can demonstrate that through, how do you call it, your articles or your publications. So if you've written even a piece on a blog, right, which sort of helps you to demonstrate your knowledge, and it's not something that is published in an academic journal, even if it's something that was released in a news item or the newspaper, it is worth including that in your write-up, especially if it's research-based, because then in your CV, you get to show that, okay, I'm someone who's able to write, who's able to critique, who's able to analyze information and put together an article for an audience to read. So it's quite important to not overlook that. Then there's professional memberships. You want to show how deep you are when it comes to professional membership, because it also reflects your network, right? And by demonstrating your network, you're able to show whoever is reading your CV that you are connected to these people, you are in these kind of associations, and that speaks to your influence too as well, right? So being able to highlight your professional memberships is quite important. Conferences attended is something that you can highlight. Your voluntary work, I've already spoken about that, and then your references. You realize that some of the things are reflected in the top masters part of things. And like, for example, you may not see the award section, but someone may have a top masters and have an award section. So it's not really cast in stone, right? At the end of the day, think about who you're selling to and then what is most important to them, and prioritize those things first. All right, so one last thing I'm going to touch on is finding what to sell. It's something that I've seen a lot of people struggle. I mean, the huge chunk of our work at Career Hill has been to understand what to present as valuable in a resume. And a lot of people struggle with that. And we have this framework that we use. We call it the IQDC framework. Was R is recognizing. So being able to recognize the things that you've done in the first place is like key, right? Sometimes it's quite challenging to have that self-awareness, right? We've seen it over and over again. 90% of the 400 plus people that we engage have a challenge with recognizing what is valuable and what's not. So when I say little and big shots, it's basically the kind of value that you're delivering to an organization, to an individual, to team members, right? In a particular setting. So whether it's voluntary or whether it's like for profit or whether it's paid work, whatever it is, you should be able to recognize the things that you are delivering on the job, the value that you're delivering on the job. Now it's a process. So when you're able to recognize, then now you quantify and then you qualify. So what does that mean? It means being able to add details to your little and big shot. So details like quantifying, like adding numbers. And if I tell you that I have a lot of money and I tell you that I have $1 million, it is very easy for your brain to picture how much money I have with the second statement. So that's the bit about quantifying and qualifying. And obviously I qualify the currency. I qualify the amount of money with the currency, right? So it paints a vivid picture of what I'm trying to communicate to you. So quantifying and qualifying things is very important. Then you need to document it. So by documenting it, you don't forget about it. And that's a challenge that a lot of people have. They do so much, but they don't document them. And there's this Ebbinghaus theory that talks about how you lose a greater chunk, more than 60% of what you've learned in 1 week if you don't revise it, right? And so there are a lot of things happening. We have busy lifestyles, etc. And for that matter, we don't tend to document these things. But if you take your time to write these things down, it makes it so easy when you have to remember and present them as stories, present them as CVs, etc. Then the last part of the process is communicating. So that is when you now use all this information into a CV or into an SOP or into an essay or into like an interview content, interview preparation content. Now, most of the people that we've encountered are often here trying to communicate the value that they delivered, and they try to skip the first 3 points. So as much as possible, we try to bring out frameworks that will help you, first of all, have confidence in yourself, recognize the kind of value that you brought to the table. Then we empower you to quantify or qualify things. And then throughout this process, because you've not documented it in the past, you now document everything. And then finally, you use that content to build your CV. Okay, so this IQDC framework is very important. Always bear it in mind. If you find yourself lost, you don't know what value you've added to an organization, always start from trying to think about where have I contributed value, and then go ahead to quantify or qualify it, then document it, and then communicate it. And we'll run through a very practical session soon. Amazing. So let's go a bit practical. So I sort of decided to take out the part that most people struggle with, which is like, it's very easy for people to write their education contents, like awards, like those things are very easy to put together. But the very difficult parts to put together is like the resume bullets, the content itself. That forms about, I don't know, like it forms about 80% or 70% of your resume content. So I decided to take out some of these things and then walk you through how you can transform something from just a task to a resume bullet, right? And then hopefully that gets to empower you to build your own resume bullets. So let's go. Let's start with teaching experience, right? So let's say the course that you're going to do, some of the requirements are that you would be able to get a graduate assistantship where you get to teach people, transfer knowledge, etc. Boom, that's fantastic. So what do? You need to go into your, should I say, your repo, your repository, right, of the things that you've done in the past, and think about what content should I use, right, to sell to this academic committee or to this professor that I'm good at teaching. I can execute if I'm given a graduate assistant role, right? So I call this raw. Oh, I was a teaching assistant, by the way, years back, like 8 years back. So pardon the bias if I use pharmacology, because I was a pharmacology teaching assistant. So the raw information, this is what most people will present with, right? You organize pharmacology tutorials for the students. So most CVs, you would see things like this, the task. But you ask yourself, how many people can write these things on their CV? A lot. Like, it's not a differentiating statement. I only have to differentiate this, and that's it. Like, anybody else can write this on their resume. So the game of building an effective resume or a stellar resume is more around how specific you can get and how granular you can get and how peculiar you can get, so that if someone reads this CV about you and they read another person's CV, they can spot the difference. So that's like the goal here. So your raw text is gonna read like, okay, I organized pharmacology tutorials for students, right? Then we can take it a step further. So version one, you're going to add descriptives. So what I mean by descriptives is that you'll be spotting the kind of nouns, right, that you have in your raw text, and you try to qualify the nouns. So remember the IQDC framework I spoke about, the R is recognizing. So probably you feel like, yeah, delivering these tutorials or organizing these tutorials is value because it helps to get the students to be very knowledgeable. The next step you have to take is to qualify and quantify it as much as possible. So what do the descriptives look like? We've moved from saying that, I mean, don't mind the change in the action word. I'll talk about this later. So over here it's organized, over here it's delivered. But we've moved from just saying tutorials to saying bi-weekly tutorials. So we've added a bit of frequency, right? So it tells you how often I was doing this kind of thing when I was a teaching assistant, right? So bi-weekly tutorials, that's one. Then the next step is pharmacology. So you can see here that I have even gone ahead to specify the type of pharmacology, the pharmacology related to the nervous system, the brain and the nervous system. That's neuropharmacology, right? So saying that delivered bi-weekly tutorials on neuropharmacology makes it extra specific. So when you compare version 1 to raw, you realize that there's a difference. Can you spot the difference? Can you spot the difference? Fantastic.
Yes.
Right? We are not even done yet, right? We are not even done yet. We have 2 more versions to go, right? So we also qualified the students. So final year students, it could be master students, it could be first year students. It doesn't matter. If it's first year students, it means that you have the ability to break down things to the minutest details for people who are starting out to understand. If it's final year students, it means that you are able to understand concepts that are advanced and you're able to transfer that knowledge. So you're able to like just bring in that detail, that level of depth. But we are not even done. This is just level 1, descriptives. So just spots, if you look at it carefully, we spotted the nouns and we sort of qualified the nouns to like tutorials, bi-weekly, pharmacology, neuropharmacology, students, final year students. Great. So after adding this color, we take it to the next level. And the next level is numbers. So sprinkle in some numbers, some metrics. Why this is important is that it helps to give a differentiation, right? It helps to have a clear picture of what you've done. So you might be thinking, okay, what if it's just 10 people? It doesn't matter. Sometimes it's just quality, right? It's not all about the quantity. So you can still go ahead and highlight the 10 people. So over here, we are using 200 as the number. So you can see that the add-on from version 1 to make a version 2 is adding the number 200, right? Then we take it to the next level. The next level is results. And that's where all the juice is at. To be honest, we have had a difficulty with this like over the years. A lot of people are not able to connect the way that they do to specific results. But think about it this way. Everybody can deliver bi-weekly tutorials, right? Everybody may, or most people may be able to, everybody with good, public speaking skills will be able to stand in front of 200 people and deliver, right? But at the end of the day, there's a result. There's a reason why you even started with this whole tutorials thing. There's a fundamental thing that you're trying to solve. And this thing makes up your stories as well for your personal statements, your SOPs. They make up those stories for you, even in your interviews. So you understand that the bottom line, or let me say the reason for organizing a tutorial session for students is to give them a better understanding of whatever they are studying. And so if they are going to get a better understanding of whatever they are studying, then that can translate into some form of success for them. And one of the typical successes for students is their exam scores. So be mindful, I'm not saying that you should manufacture numbers and then put it there, but you have to think broadly about how do I measure the impact of this work that I'm doing? Now, the best part is that we have sort of built a tool, a free tool, an ungated tool at Mandy, which I would sort of like share with you in the chat section. I'm trying to escape the presentation. So we call it Mandy Quant. And what does Mandy Quant do? It basically helps you to discover your true impacts. It can be at work, it can be outside work, etc. So you can quantify your career achievement. So this is not going to transform your resume bullets. No, it's going to tell you that if you've done something, right, this is what you need to track to really know the true impact of what you've done. So as I mentioned, anybody at all can deliver a presentation in front of people, right? Or deliver a tutorial. But at the end of the day, do the students understand what you are delivering to them? Are they putting that to use? And is that reflecting in some form of success for them? So let's take a look at this. If you're saying that what you achieve is you organize pharmacology tutorials for students, at least you have an understanding, right, that you've added value. Your job title was a teaching assistant. And then the industry you worked in was education. You tell us that you're not a robot. And then you click on the Discover Your True Impact button. Let's see if it's going to work. For some interesting reason, when you have tech tools, the day you demo them, that's when they break down on you. So it's loading. Give it some time. Oh, fantastic. It works. So typically, I hope you can see the results. So it's saying that your job title, teaching assistant, this is your achievement. Now, we are running this based on AI, right? So they are showing you commonly used metrics that reflect success of these tasks. So think about things around student engagement, level of participation, right? So number of questions asked, assignments completed, discussions, etc. So maybe if you give everybody an assignment and all of them are able to submit the assignment on time, then you can use that as a level of engagement. So that becomes like 100% engagement rate, right? You can think about attendance rates, time management, etc. Think about learning outcomes. So this is very important. This is like the correct impact, the outcomes. So as I mentioned, the exam scores, right? So this is the extent to which students have acquired knowledge and skills in pharmacology as demonstrated by their performance on assessments, quizzes, and exams. So ultimately, running your tutorials and all of that should feed into this learning outcomes. So if you really want to tell a very impactful story about what you did, I'm not saying that excluding the learning outcomes, the quantified learning outcomes, will not help you sell. But if you want to sell to the end, like you want to do the ultimate selling, then you need to think about including this kind of results in your CV. So learning outcomes is like performance on assessment, feedback rating. They're giving you feedback on your style of teaching, etc. So if you're in this audience and you're a teaching assistant, you're running tutorials, etc., you've never like decided to run an anonymous survey from the students to really think about how they are rating or give feedback on how you are delivering your work. I think you should try and do that, because whenever you pay attention to the data, it's always going to give you some idea of something that's going wrong or something that's going on well. So it's important to do these kind of things. So with Mandy Quant, you're able to like sort of leverage this tool, which is free, by the way, and then type in anything that you think you're proud of. It does not write a resume bullet for you, no. It rather points you to the core things that you need to look at to measure the impact of your work. And as I mentioned, CareerWell is in the business of boosting self-awareness. So this is one of the ways that we are trying to boost self-awareness for the masses. Yeah, so the link is in the chat section. You can do a lot of that. So now let's get back to what we're doing. So as you see, version 3 talks about the score, right? So if you have the score in mind, like if you have an understanding of what would help you sort of assess whether you're doing a great job or not, that becomes like the ultimate thing that you use as your success metric, right? So we literally started from organized pharmacology tutorials for the students, but we've seen the final result. The final result has some form of, should I say, qualification to the nouns, right? So you can see bi-weekly tutorials, you can see neuropharmacology, you can see 200 final year students, you can see medium exam scores getting boosted by 20%. So if, I mean, median, we all know median score, but to break it down further, it's like 50, half of, if you have a median score, let's say it's 80%, right? Half of the population are scoring below the 80%, and the other half is scoring above that 80%. So it's a great way to gauge how well people are performing, right? And if you want to find out how to measure median scores, you can just literally Google. But the bottom line is that you should have the data to know that, okay, I have half of my students falling above the score and half falling below the score. So that result, when you compare it to the raw version, you realize that there's a great improvement. And that is how you sell yourself. So any professor that picks this up knows that this person will be able to run bi-weekly tutorials. They have an understanding of neuropharmacology. Even if you're not going to teach neuropharmacology, they have an understanding of things. They're able to teach stuff. They are able to engage like 200 final year students. They've been able to follow through on all the things that, you know, they've done, and they've sort of seen that their work has contributed to this increase in median exam scores, 20% increase. That's very impressive. So if you are thinking about representing your teaching experience, I'll tell you this is the way to go. That's how we run the show at CareerView. Let's go into research. Reviewed research papers to develop reports. Typical, you find this on every academic CV. And if you want to take it a step further, again, as I said, start with your descriptives, right? So in those descriptives, we are trying to add more juice to the stuff. Instead of saying reviewed, right? We are saying that you're being able to analyze, you've been able to extract insights from research papers, right? And we are even talking about where you found those research papers, right? Across multiple academic search engines. So there are lots of academic search engines beyond Google Scholar. Microsoft has one. There are other ones too as well that you can search for. And then there's also another thing, like we are talking about what you use to achieve this kind of extraction. I mean, finding the research papers and all of that. That's Boolean search. I mean, it's a bit technical, but Boolean search is using some operators, and or I've posted about this on my LinkedIn before, but you can literally Google what Boolean search is, and it's going to expose you. It's very, very basic, right? And it's a way to sift through very huge databases to get very accurate information on what you're looking for. So version 1, again, purely descriptives, right? We are changing reviewed to analyze and extracting insights. And there's another thing that I want to point out. Normally, people think that writing things like problem solving or analytical skills, those soft skills on their CV, is what shows that they have those soft skills. But reserve only technical skills for the skills section of your CV. So when I say technical skills, like skills that are related to your industry, I don't know, like maybe using academic search engines, that's a skill. Boolean search is a skill, right? But soft skills like problem solving, communication, etc., collaboration, it should be seen in your resume bullet. So if you're saying that you are analytical, right, this is the best way to display your analytical skills, being able to analyze and extract insight from research papers. You are literally speaking to your analytical skills. Okay, let's take it to the next step, adding numbers. So if you're adding numbers, we are now adding the number of research articles, so 24 research papers. It shows that, okay, you are someone who decides to read wide. And I mean, Laura is doing PhD. I'm sure she's reading about 100 papers. Some should read the abstract, some should read the conclusion, some should dig from the methodology, etc. But all of those things count to the scope of the research work that you're doing. So 24 research papers across multiple academic search engines. Then finally, the results. Again, at the end of the day, it's about the outcome, right? What you're able to present as an outcome. And so you developing and publishing a 50-page research report can be an outcome. It can be a success. It can be a milestone, right? And how did you do that? You did that by analyzing and extracting insight from 24 research papers across multiple search engines using Boolean search. Now that puts everything together. So you literally move from reviewing research papers to develop reports to now talking about even the weight of the report that you delivered, like a 50-page report, right? The fact that you've published it, right? And the fact that you achieved this by analyzing and extracting insight from 24 research papers across these multiple search engines using Boolean search. So anybody who reads the raw version and then reads the final version is able to spot the difference. And here's the thing, don't let someone eat your cake because they're a good communicator, right? A lot of people get their cake eaten because other people are communicating better than they can communicate. So if you can use this framework of recognizing the thing, qualifying and quantifying, and then adding your results using a tool like MandiQuant, it solves the issue for you. It takes you from 0 to 100, or maybe 10 to 100, right? So it's very important to take a look at these frameworks and adopt it. Now, one other thing that I want to highlight is that we've realized this thing a lot at CareerView. Well, it's not, let me see two other things. The first thing is when people collaborate with other people to achieve a particular result, they feel bad to connect the work that they've done to those results. So let me give you an example. When I was a teaching assistant, I used to support the students. I had 4 students that were under my supervisor. So I used to support them with, looking at their the content. How do you call that thing? It's been long since I did academic stuff. But then the whole problem statement and justification bit of the paper, all those kind of things, their research proposal, etc. I'll take a look at them, their presentation. I would give them tips on how to present and all of that. Now, all of these 4 students had an A in their final year pharmacology project, right? A lot of people would sit in the seat and feel like, I'm not the one who wrote the paper, so I can't say that I contributed to that A grade that these people got. But that's a very wrong approach to look at things, right? No man is an island. And so whenever you collaborate, we are not saying that you should say that you caused the A, but it's more about saying that you delivered support or you facilitated some activities for these people. And through that, they were able to secure a grade A in their pharmacology project. Now, their successes become an extension of your work. And it's something that is worth putting on your resume. So if you're in the audience, you're fond of sort of downplaying things that you contributed to, you collaborated with people on, please stop it. Okay, stop it. Think about how you can represent the successes. Think about supporting them all the way to the end. And then you can attribute yourself to their success. So it's quite important to think about that. Then the last one I want to talk about is the framework that we use. So we have this framework called the MASK framework, right, at CareerView. So what's MASK framework? M stands for metric, A for action word, S for stakeholders, K for keywords, right? Every industry has its keywords. Academia has its keywords. So what are keywords? They are specific things that are related to academia. Academic search engines related to academia, research papers related to academia, Boolean search related to academia, developing reports. I'm not saying that it's limited to academia, but it's related to academia, right? So those keywords are things that you need to include in your resume bullets to make it heavy, to make it punch, to make it nice, right? And it comes from being able to properly qualify the nouns, what I taught you with the descriptives. So being able to expand on things, being able to look at a noun and say, okay, this noun, can I add an adjective, or where did I find this particular thing? So like when you take a research paper, right? I found it across multiple academic search engines. That adds some bulk to it, but also gives a context. It's not like you're doing general searches everywhere, but you are literally going to academic search engines, right? You are using Boolean search. That's also like a skill, but it also speaks to the keywords, right? Keywords cover a lot of things, terminologies, frameworks, skills, all of that. They fall under keywords, your CV keywords. So these are things that you need to constantly include. Now, the S stands for stakeholders. Stakeholders is basically people you interacted with. So for the example that I gave, the student that I interacted with, they are my stakeholders, right? So it's just a way to show that you collaborate with people, right? So if I say I facilitated blah, blah, blah for final year students, and then they secured a grade A in their final year project in pharmacology, that talks about how I'm able to work with people, how I'm able to collaborate. And again, it comes down to the point that I mentioned, that soft skills are demonstrated in the bullets, right? Collaborated or facilitated, etc. All of those things go into the bullets. You don't put it in your skill section that's collaboration skills, problem solving, all of that. Let's see you doing that in the various resume bullets. So that's the S and then the K for the mask framework. I'm taking it from the bottom to the top. Then the A is action words. So what are action words? Action words make your bullets sound nice. So like analyze and extracted. It sounds very sweet, but it's basically reading and reviewing and taking out information from the papers to write your final research report, right? Now, it's very easy. It's on Google. If you go on Google right now, you type resume action words, you would find tons of them. You can find up to 1,000 of them, right? So these are just words that help you to carry your point across very well. It makes it very heavy. And so by making it very heavy, you're able to communicate it. Then the last one is the M, which is metrics. So I've spoken about metrics, but the numbers, they add colors to the things. They help the brain to picture whatever you're saying, because the person reading your CV has never worked with you. They probably do not know you from anywhere. So this is the opportunity to paint the picture for them. And so using a mask framework helps you to achieve that communication thing. When you're done building the resume bullets, you just check, okay, does it have metrics? Does it have the action words? Does it have the keywords? It's not everything that you collaborate on. So sometimes you may have stakeholders, sometimes you may not. So in this case, you don't have a stakeholder. It's just you doing your stuff, right? That does not take anything from the bullet. So you apply the mask framework to your resume bullet to sort of vet it. Then finally, if you want to think about the logical flow of how the bullet is going to look like, you can talk about, achieving a particular result. So as you can see, developed and published a 50-page research report. So you achieved a particular result by doing what? By performing some actions. So the analyzing and extracting insights from 24 research papers, they are tasks, right? So if you look at it carefully, you realize that this first part is talking about achieving a particular result. And then there's a by conjunction, and then it continues with what you did to achieve the result, right? And then it talks about the skills and competencies that you used in the process. So using Boolean search. So having a mask framework, having the achieve results by performing certain tasks, using certain skills framework helps you to structure things properly. And also starting things from the raw version, adding descriptives, adding numbers, adding results, also takes things to the next level. Okay, 50, no, I'm 1 hour, 4 minutes in. Let me just close out this and then I'll project the CV and then we'll wrap up with the questions. So yes, again, professional experience, right? You're organizing a training program for healthcare practitioners. You can turn that around and say you designed and executed a capacity building program. Training, capacity building, the same thing. organized, designed, and executed, it gives a better idea that you are literally the one planning the thing and you're the one executing it, right? And as you can see, that's the descriptives. It's not just a training program, it's highlighting training program in neuroplasty. So I may not be in the lab, I may be applying for a master's in neuropharmacology, but I am maybe a salesperson and I am training doctors, nurses, healthcare practitioners, pharmacists on neuroplasty or neuroplasticity. This is the best time to highlight that. Although it's a commercial thing, this is the best time to highlight that, right? So that in that way, I'm able to like communicate my knowledge, my understanding, my skills in that particular domain area. Now, if we add in numbers, again, we quantify the number of healthcare practitioners you're dealing with. And then finally, we add in a median score. So you can see the trend. Whenever there's a training, whenever there's capacity building, you should be able to measure some test scores or should be able to get some feedback rating. It's really very simple. And with MandiQuant, I mean, you can explore a whole lot of other metrics that you can use to quantify your skills or your competencies.